Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be talking about all of the books that I read in June, and it was I felt like my ratings were all over the place this month. I discovered some really great books, and then also I had two-star ratings. So it was an interesting month. I read a total of 11 books. 5 fantasy, 5 romance, and 1 nonfiction. So the first book I read this month was actually one of my least favorite books that I've read. This is Funny You Should Ask by Alyssa Sussman, and I originally wanted to read this book because of the pink cover. If any book has a cute pink cover, most likely I am going to read it. And honestly, I wish I could pinpoint what didn't work for me in the story. I think maybe I just felt like I was on the outside looking in instead of like in the story, if that makes sense. And I just didn't feel that connection to the characters like I wanted to. But this follows a journalist who gets the opportunity to interview her favorite actor, and they really hit it off, and it kind of just goes back and forth between present day and 10 years ago. But yeah, I don't know, something about it fell flat for me, so I gave this one 2 stars. And the next book I read or reread is It's Not Summer Without You, and I wanted to reread this trilogy before season 2 of the show comes out. So this has been so much fun. I just love this trilogy. This has been a part of my life for so long, like 10 plus years. And I feel like when a book or a series has been a part of your life for that long, every time you revisit it, it feels like coming home. And that's how I feel about Cousins Beach and Belly and Jeremiah and Conrad. I've been listening to the audiobooks for this, and the audiobooks have been re-recorded by the actors that play Belly and Jeremiah and Conrad. And for this one specifically, it's Belly and Jeremiah. And then in the third one, it will be Belly and Conrad, which I'm so excited to listen to that. But I feel like the second book in the trilogy is probably the slowest one, but it is very necessary for the plot. So I give this one a 4-star rating. Next, I read City of Bones and City of Ashes by Cassandra Clare. I loved the Infernal Devices trilogy, also by Cassandra Clare, and I loved the Shadowhunter world. But for some reason, well, I know the reason, I'm really struggling with this series. And I talked about this in my previous video. I'm really struggling with the Jace and Clary plot. And so, yeah, I feel like it's definitely not my favorite series from her, at least so far. I gave the first one a 3-star rating. And if you aren't familiar with the Shadowhunter world, basically this is a young adult urban fantasy series, and Shadowhunters are demon hunters. And then I gave the second book a 2-star rating. I wanted to rate this higher, but I couldn't do it with the Jace and Clary thing. But I've heard that this book is kind of a filler book in the series, and it does get better. So I am going to read the next book in my July TBR, and hopefully I give that book a higher rating. I really want to like this series. There are definitely certain things that I love about these books, don't get me wrong. Like, I love the Shadowhunter world, I love Magnus Bane, and I do like the characters, and I do see potential, so stay tuned. Next, I read A Lady's Guide to Fortune Hunting by Sophie Irwin, and I was so kindly gifted this by Penguin Books, and I had so much fun with this. I didn't realize just how much I love historical romance until I read this. This follows Kitty Talbot, and Kitty's father has left her a massive debt, and she has 12 weeks to save her family from ruin. So she decides to head to England in search of a fortune, or in search of a husband with a fortune. I thought this was just so fun and witty and charming, and I definitely recommend if you are looking for a clean historical romance. I gave this 4 stars. Next, I read the Little Golden Book biography of Miss Taylor Swift. I gave this 5 stars. No complaints. I thought it was perfect. And the illustrations are so cute. Next, I read Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood, and this is Ali's most recent rom-com. It actually came out this month. I was seeing this all over Bookstagram, and I thought that this cover is honestly one of the cutest covers I've ever seen. I don't know, something about the orange and the pink and the illustration. And this is Ali Hazelwood's most academic book. If you enjoyed The Love Hypothesis, I definitely recommend this one. And this follows two rival physicists. We have Elsie and we have Jack. And Elsie is definitely a Mirrorball girly, like the true definition of a Mirrorball girl. She kind of puts on different faces around different people, if you will. And what I loved about her relationship with Jack was that she could be her true self around him. And I think just seeing Elsie overcome her people-pleasing tendencies was honestly my favorite part of the story. My favorite quote from this book was when Elsie said, "Bold of you to assume that the real me is my best hand." And Jack says, "Foolish of you to think it isn't." I just think they are so good for each other. And I gave this a 3.75 rating, but I'm feeling kind of generous. I think I'm gonna bump this up to a 4. The more I talk about it, the more I just realize like they had really good chemistry. Next, I read The Love Wager by Lynn Painter, and this is a friends to lovers story, and also it has fake dating. And this is about Hallie and Jack, and they make a wager on who can find love first, but not with each other, like finding someone else, which is really ironic because they're so obviously meant to be together. I just think Lynn Painter's writing is so addicting. It's so breezy and so fun, and I loved the witty banter. I would have given this a 5-star if it weren't for the strong language, which I think is why I do prefer her young adult novels over her adult novels. But I still really love this, and I gave this 4 stars. Then I read Once Upon a Broken Heart and The Ballad of Never After. And I did do a reading vlog on these, so I'll link that down below. But these books were my perfect fantasy books. I couldn't have asked for a more magical experience. This is enchanting and mysterious, and honestly it had me captivated from the very first page to the very last page. And I loved the first book, but I honestly loved the second book even more, and I didn't think that was even possible because this was just so perfect to me. And so the second book does end on a really big cliffhanger, so I'm very excited for the third book, which is set to be released in October. But I think that this is the perfect entry series to fantasy. So if you want to get into fantasy, I definitely recommend these. I think that these are gonna make it into like my top 5 favorite books of this year. And if you aren't familiar with this story, this follows Evangeline Fox, and Evangeline has always believed in true love. That is, until the love of her life is engaged to be married to another. So she is desperate to stop this wedding, and she makes a bargain with the Prince of Hearts. His name is Jax, and she soon discovers that making a bargain with the Prince of Hearts is a very dangerous game. The last book I read this month was Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross, and I had predicted that this would be a 5-star read, but I gave it a 3.75, which is still a decent rating. But I do think my reading experience was kind of skewed because I read it immediately after The Ballad of Never After, and I do think I should have taken a little break after this book because my mind was still very much in this world. And so moving on to another book so soon, I just don't think it was my best idea. So since my mind was still so much stuck in that world, it was kind of hard not to compare the two. And it did feel like Divine Rivals was a lot slower compared to the fast-paced world of Once Upon a Broken Heart. So I did feel like it was a little slow, and I also was kind of hoping for some more magical elements. I would say that this is more of a historical romance with like a little bit of fantasy, at least in the first book. I think we may see more magical elements in the second book, but this follows two rival journalists. We have Iris Winnow and Roman Kitt, and they are linked by magical typewriters, and so they write anonymous letters to each other, except he knows who she is, but she has no idea that she's been writing to her workplace rival. Reading their letters was honestly my favorite part of the story, and also the audiobook was so good. There are two narrators, and the narrator for Roman sounds so much like Daniel Radcliffe, and so I really loved that. But yeah, I do kind of want to go back and reread this at some point and see if my rating is higher, because like I said, I do think my experience and my feelings towards the book was kind of skewed based off of what I had just read before. So, but yeah, those are all of the books I read this month, and let me know what your favorite read was from the month of June, and I will see you guys again soon. Bye.